Good evening. Two California Highway Patrol officers are fighting for their lives tonight at a hospital in Alhambra. 33-year-old John Martinez and 27-year-old Jim Zabo were shot and wounded while patrolling on their motorcycles. Newsman Mike Botula, along with cameraman Bill Knight and soundman Bob Zimmerman, were first on the scene. And we have this exclusive mini-cam report.
California Highway Patrol motor officers were gunned down in the westbound lanes of the San Bernardino Freeway near Garfield Avenue. They were within a few hundred yards of each other when the shots rang out.
As for, we did advise all the agencies, only that it was
Even though the two were wearing protective body armor, they both suffered severe injuries. An off-duty Los Angeles police officer was among those who stopped to help.
When I arrived, the officer was already down on the pavement. Several citizens were giving him first aid. I ascertained a suspect description and partial license number, put that out over the officer's police radio, and just stood by for responding units.
The CHP shut down the westbound San Bernardino Freeway, both to facilitate emergency care for the fallen officers and also to gather evidence. Once investigators were able to talk to one of the wounded men, they had a better picture of what had happened.
We have now found out that one motorcycle was moving at the time the incident occurred. The other motorcycle and officer was approximately 1/8 of a mile west of this location, straddling his motorcycle. The first officer was shot while he was moving. He went down in the roadway. The other officer was shot while he was straddling his bike. He did go down the motorcycle, obviously tumbled over. Both officers were transported to the hospital. They are in serious condition. They have been shot at least twice each.
Countless times during the afternoon, the All Points Bulletin was broadcast for the suspect vehicle.
suspect vehicle information as we have it is a black over green, possibly black over blue. It's given as a blue Buick Riviera. Partial suspect license 1. Boy John Zebra 01, unknown last digit.
This unprovoked attack on the two motor officers brings back grim memories for officers in the California Highway Patrol. Memories of an April night in 1970 when 4 California Highway Patrol officers were shot to death in Newhall.
Reporters on Vermont. At Alhambra Community Hospital remains touch and go for one of the wounded officers, but better news for the other. Just about 90 minutes ago, Officer John Martinez came out of 6 hours of surgery. His condition said to be very critical. His partner, James Zabo, however, is said to be in stable condition in the hospital's intensive care unit. His life apparently was never in any danger despite his wounds.
Oh, my dear. Switchboard. To replenish the blood that we use.
Tonight, the hospital switchboard is jammed with calls from those offering blood for Officer Martinez, who by mid-evening had already gone through more than a dozen units of type O positive. The continuing deliveries here of blood are coming from the Red Cross and area hospitals, and people are being told to contact the Red Cross, not to come here to donate blood. And as the hours went by, colleagues and relatives kept a vigil at the hospital. At 7 tonight, a medical briefing was held to detail the injuries to John Martinez.
He had a laceration of the right lobe of the liver, a laceration of the right kidney. He had several perforations of the small intestine and the large intestine. He had a perforation of the diaphragm on the right side and a perforation of an intercostal artery on the right.
This is Officer Martinez, who was hit by 2 bullets, possibly from a .45 caliber gun, and his partner Zabo, hit by 3 bullets, but saved from serious injury, apparently by his bulletproof vest. It was shortly after 3 this afternoon when the shootings took place here on the San Bernardino Freeway between the Garfield and Atlantic exits. While one of the officers cleared some debris from the roadway, his partner was conducting a traffic break about 300 yards away. The suspects pulled up, shot one, then raced to the other man and shot him before fleeing. More than a dozen witnesses have identified the suspects as 2 Latin men in a late model Buick, a car that we are told apparently was stolen about a month ago. Now, doctors say that they have controlled Martinez's bleeding, but the need for blood is still very critical. So if you want to donate blood, you should call up the Red Cross, and they have set up an emergency 24-hour hotline for this case. The number you should call is 386-7751. That is 24 hours. Again, the number 386-7751. That's the situation here from Alhambra Hospital. We go now to Larry Carroll with the CHP side of the story. Larry?
Thank you very much, Judd. We are at the CHP headquarters on Vermont Avenue in Los Angeles, where there's just been a news conference held by Assistant Chief Orrin Kamenish and several other CHP officials with regard to the status of the case, as well as much of what you've talked about just now, the status of the officers who are now in the hospital. With me now is Sergeant Lance Erickson. And Lance, you can bring us up to date with regard to what we know about the suspects and the suspect vehicle.
We do not know a lot more than we knew several hours ago. We do know that we're looking for 2 male Latins. We're looking for a black over green Buick. We have a partial license number. We've run down several license numbers this evening, and none of them have come back to the suspect's vehicle.
Now, there had been some talk that this car had been stolen. You haven't been able to confirm that, though.
We have not been able to confirm that any vehicle has been stolen. We did have one stolen license plate, but I haven't had anything that confirmed a stolen vehicle.
Okay, we were told at one point that there was some composite sketches of the suspects. Is that true?
That is not true. There are composite sketches of some other suspects that may lead to the case, but it is not true as far as this case is concerned.
Thank you very much, Sergeant Erickson. In addition, the CHP officials called this evening for anyone who may have witnessed this incident to please call the CHP or the Alhambra Police Department, which is spearheading this investigation tonight.
At a supermarket in the city of San Gabriel, yesterday afternoon, 2 men, both Latins, walked into the store and approached manager Ed Gansey. "Keep your mouth shut," one of them said, "and don't make any sudden moves." He walked with them to a nearby safe, handed them some cash, and watched them leave. After the manager of the store gave them $500 from the safe, the 2 men walked from that door across the front of the store and disappeared in the direction of that alley. No one actually saw them get into their getaway vehicle. Police theorize they drove south from the robbery scene at Mission and Las Tunas. Their destination, the San Bernardino Freeway. Unaware of the robbery, the 2 highway patrol officers spotted a piece of lumber in the westbound lanes of the freeway. Officer James Zabo slowed traffic down with his motorcycle. The robbers panicked, thinking they had been caught, and shot him twice. 100 feet down the road, Officer James Martinez was standing beside his motorcycle when the 2 men in the black and green Buick Riviera shot him. Highway patrol officers, police, and sheriff's detectives swarmed to the shooting scene, looking for any clues that might lead them to the killers. Today, a few hours before Officer Martinez died, a surgeon at Alhambra Community Hospital described in chilling detail the massive injuries to Officer Martinez.
His injuries, in addition to the liver, and I did have to remove the right half of his liver, were a totally smashed right kidney, and I did remove the right kidney. He had multiple gunshot wounds of the small and large intestine with spillage of intestinal contents into the abdominal cavity, and this may well provide a source for serious infection as the hours and days go by.
Officer Zabo was apparently saved by his bulletproof vest.
The other officer at the present time is doing quite well. That's Officer Zabo. He's stable. He appears to have superficial injuries involving the skin and subcutaneous tissue of the neck and of the shoulder area. We are continuing to watch him closely. The possibility of surgery for him has not been ruled out. It still is a possibility.
Even while the search for the 2 suspects moved into high gear, hundreds of volunteers lined up outside the Red Cross headquarters in downtown Los Angeles to donate blood to the 2 injured officers. Many of them were fellow police officers, but many others were just concerned people who were shocked by the news of the shooting. Mrs. Kathy Bojuski took the day off work to give blood.
Because I feel sorry for the officers, and I feel sorry for the families, and I'm just stunned, and I'm scared what is happening here.
We are still urging anyone who may have been in the vicinity of that incident yesterday, and I'm sure there were a number who could have seen or been in a position to see. We would like to urge anyone who has that knowledge to contact us, and we will certainly accept their information even on an anonymous basis if they prefer.
There's something wrong if the officers, police officers who try to help us are shot at. There's something wrong with the whole society. We all have to think twice before we go against the people who help us.
Hundreds of calls have come in here to Alhambra Community Hospital from well-wishers, some of them influential and well-known, like Governor Jerry Brown, a few movie stars. And then there were the 3 small children who persuaded their mother to drive them over here to the hospital last night so they could deliver themselves these handwritten get well cards. One addressed to each of the officers, and each saying simply, "Get well soon. I like you. Love, Charlene, Marie, and Brian." Jim Mitchell, Channel 2 News, Alhambra Community Hospital.
Funeral arrangements for Officer Martinez have not yet been set. Meanwhile, late word from the hospital, Officer Szabo continues to do very well.
Flags at the 90-plus CHP headquarters in California are at half-mast in honor of Martinez. The department is offering a $5,000 reward for any information leading to the arrest and conviction of the officer's assailants.
The Highway Patrol is setting up a memorial fund for the Martinez family. Martinez leaves his wife, Lydia, daughter Yvette, who is 5, and 1-year-old son, Johnny. Dixie Wiley reporting for News at 10.
The search continues for suspects in what is now a case of murder. Thus far, police have very few leads. They're looking for 2 male Latinos who may have been involved in the armed robbery of a San Gabriel market just prior to the shootings. Patrolman Martinez managed to describe the suspect's car as a black and green Buick Riviera. Officers say they believe there are still many witnesses that have not come forward. They are asking the public's assistance to help them solve this case.
Here's the latest now at 11. A statewide search continues for 2 gunmen suspected of shooting down 2 highway patrol officers on the San Bernardino Freeway yesterday. Their car, according to witnesses, was a black over green Buick Riviera. The license beginning with 1BJZ. About an hour ago, we learned that one of the suspects goes by the nicknames Viojo or Gato. He's a 23-year-old Maine Latin with short black hair, brown eyes, weighs 130 pounds. His left ear has an earring hole, and his left eye has a teardrop tattoo beneath it. Tonight, wounded officer James Szabo is in stable condition. But his partner, 33-year-old John Martinez, died this afternoon of massive wounds. He was an 8-year veteran with a wife and 2 young children.
Funeral services for Johnny Martinez were held today at St. George Catholic Church in Ontario. His widow Lydia, family and friends were joined by the governor and the lieutenant governor, law enforcement officers, hundreds of them, from agencies throughout the state of California. Numerous other states' highway patrols sent representatives. The church was filled to overflowing. Hundreds of officers listened from the street and yards near the church as the slain officer was eulogized.
He took on the task of soldier. He took on the task of husband, father, and servant. How well he fulfilled those tasks, you and I know. That Johnny believed in justice.
The flag-draped casket was preceded to the cemetery by a procession of over 320 motorcycle officers. The slain patrolman's partner, James Szabo, wounded by the same gunman who killed Martinez, was released from the hospital to attend the funeral. Nearly 100 civilians who could not get to the church were waiting at the cemetery, where the graveside services started, even as other patrol cars wound their way through the cemetery. Following graveside prayers, a Marine Corps honor guard sounded taps. The American flag covering the casket was folded and presented to Mrs. Martinez. Following words of condolence from Glenn Craig, the Commissioner of the California Highway Patrol, and friends, the service was over. Bob Banfield, Channel 7 Eyewitness News in Ontario.
It was the largest funeral for a police officer in anyone's memory. They came by the thousands to pay tribute to John Martinez. They came from virtually every city in Los Angeles County, from every county in Southern California, and from states as far away as Massachusetts and Florida. And they filled the tiny church to overflowing.
This morning we gather to return to Johnny to Lydia, to his parents, to his brothers and sisters, the same love that he gave all of us. He took on the task of student. He took on the task of soldier. He took on the task of husband, father, and servant.
They came because John Martinez was one of them, a police officer, and beyond that was an even stronger bond. He was a motorcycle patrolman.
Even though I walk in the dark valley, I fear no evil, for you are at my side, with your rod and your staff that give me courage. The Lord is my shepherd, there is nothing I shall want. You spread the table before me. In the sight of my foes, you anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. The Lord is my shepherd, there is nothing I shall want.
There was no talk today of the freeway ambush that cost John Martinez his life, the ambush that also injured his close friend and partner, Officer Jim Szabo, who attended the funeral in a wheelchair. No talk of the man still being sought by police in the shooting, a man with a teardrop tattoo on his cheek. Today, the tears were real.
Johnny's spiritual eyes are now filled with the light of God. And they are watching us, and they wait for that day when we shall share his perfect joy.
Jim Mitchell, Channel 2 News.
Gonzalez was shot to death by Salt Lake City police outside his motorhome, the same Itasca motorhome sought by Southern California authorities since October. But the Salt Lake officers did not know that as they approached the vehicle parked in a backyard. A neighbor had called the police reporting a suspicious person in the area. Two men were questioned at the front door of the motorhome. Suddenly, police say a third man, Gonzalez, stepped out firing his pistol. The officers returned fire. When the shooting stopped, Gonzalez was dead. So was 33-year-old Ronald Heaps, a 7-year veteran on the Salt Lake Police Force. Dennis Nelson, a 34-year-old officer, was wounded, as was one of Gonzalez's companions, 27-year-old Anthony Reyes, who died a few hours later at a hospital. Two other men tried to escape on foot, but were captured. They are expected to face murder charges. Here in Los Angeles, Highway Patrol officials called reporters to their division headquarters on Vermont Avenue. They made the formal announcement. The 3.5-month search for Eugene Dale Gonzalez is finally over.
I'm certainly not pleased that the person lost his life, but by the same token, we're very glad that he will not be out where he will be a hazard to other police officers and the public anymore.
The division commander Dale Fargo compared the Salt Lake shootout with the murder of CHP Officer Johnny Martinez October 1st.
Johnny Martinez was shot twice in the back. I think this is very significant. It's not like where there's almost a 50-50 chance. If an officer walks up and he knows something is going down, and you're aware of it, you're tensed, you're apprehensive, and you're planning for it. But this is just like that. I think that's why I think it was such a cold-blooded situation.
The manhunt that came to an end in Salt Lake City began with a robbery in San Gabriel. Investigators say Gonzalez and his longtime partner in crime, Thomas Martinez, both robbery fugitives from Colorado, held up a supermarket. As they fled on the San Bernardino freeway, they spotted two highway patrol officers slowing traffic to remove some wood from the freeway. But the gunman apparently thought it was a police roadblock. Officers Johnny Martinez and James Szabo were shot as the two men escaped in this car. The next day, Officer Martinez died at an Alhambra hospital. His family and close friends went home as the search for the two men turned into a murder investigation. The Sheriff's Homicide Bureau took over, checking out hundreds of telephone tips. An all-points bulletin was teletyped across the country. 2 weeks after the death of Officer Martinez, Thomas Martinez was arrested as he walked along a downtown L.A. street with his common-law wife, 19-year-old Lynn Gallegos. Both were charged with several Southern California robberies. A murder charge is yet to be filed against Martinez. It appears the district attorney was waiting until the capture of his partner, Gonzalez. No one anticipated Gonzalez's life would end just the way it apparently was lived, in violence. John Marshall, News Center 4.
The manhunt for Eugene Dale Gonzalez ended in the same way it started, at the scene of a shooting. The 35-year-old fugitive, wanted for the October 1st fatal shooting of CHP Officer John Martinez and the wounding of his partner James Zabo, was killed last night in a shootout with Salt Lake City police. According to police, 2 officers and a reserve deputy responded to a disturbance call. When the officers began questioning Gonzalez, he pulled out a handgun and without warning fired 2 shots point blank at Officer Ronald Heaps, hitting him in the chest area. Heaps died instantly. His partner, Dennis Nelson, was also shot and is now listed in serious condition. Despite the wounds, Nelson and the reserve officer returned the fire, killing Gonzalez and a second suspect, Anthony Reyes. A third suspect was also wounded, and a fourth was taken into custody. Today, fingerprints positively identified the dead man as Gonzalez. The CHP Southern Division Commander Dale Fargo said there was other strong evidence at the scene which showed Gonzalez was the man local lawmen were looking for.
There was a birth certificate in the motorhome to a Eugene Dale Gonzalez. As part of the autopsy, which was conducted this morning at 9 o'clock Mountain Time, Gonzalez was identified by tattoos, scars, and a certain anatomical discrepancy on his body.
Gonzalez was the subject of a nationwide hunt that began October 1st. He and an accomplice, Thomas Martinez, had robbed a supermarket in San Gabriel. While on the San Bernardino freeway, they came across CHP officers Martinez and Zabo. As they drove past the officers, they opened fire, hitting Martinez and Zabo. Martinez died the following day. Zabo was hospitalized but survived. Representatives from the CHP, DA's office, Sheriff's Department, and Alhambra Police Department will now be going back to Salt Lake City for a follow-up investigation. In the meantime, CHP officials say that, despite the tragic circumstances, they are glad that the manhunt is over. Henry Alfaro reporting for Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
And the L.A. County District Attorney's Office said tonight that even though Gonzalez was killed up in Salt Lake City, the case against his accomplice, Martinez, and 2 others here in the Los Angeles area is still pending.